Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Long boys blues, 1975. A YouTuber's on the rise. Reviewing games, and sometimes friends. But Long boys blues, 1975.
Hey YouTube, Longboys Post 1975 and welcome to a random vlog. Welcome to the ticking clock room. As I always say, if you don't like the sound of ticking clocks, two tits I really couldn't give because I'm quite a fan. Anyway, what do I want to talk about this week? Once again, it's going to be nostalgia based because why? Nostalgia is a hell of a drug and it's free and it has no detrimental effects to your person whatsoever. Possibly your wallet, to be fair. But this is another example of is this something that kids even do anymore? Are they allowed to do it? Could you argue that the world is, a far more dangerous place now, so they shouldn't do it? We'll get a little bit more into that in a bit, but you've seen the title, and I just want to say, do you know what? Right, I just have a massive amount of nostalgic memories of riding your bike to your mate's house after school and in the summer holidays as a kid. Obviously, I've done a video years ago in my nostalgic memories of series. Whether I put this in that, I don't know. Where I talk about going around your mates after school for tea, and that would have more so been to do with primary school, and that would have been your parents taking you, to your friend's house after school, and they would cook you tea, and you would experience the computers at the house and stuff like that. And it was absolutely fantastic. It was a rite, a ritual of primary school that you would do with your best friend or friends. And I have great memories of stuff like that. But there's no denying that one of the biggest parts of anyone's childhood, again, is this a thing anymore? I don't know. I'm Generation X. You could argue that I'm not saying every generation before me had a shit childhood. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying Generation X had just enough of everything and just not enough of everything, because less is more, for it to be a perfectly balanced out childhood. People say to me many times who are much younger than me, and I've said this many times before, which is, oh man, computers sucks when you're a kid. Look, we got PlayStation 5 and we've got Xbox Series X, and I say, yeah, well, I grew up with the absolute birth of an industry and followed it all the way through to where it is now. You can't even come close to how monumentally cool that is to see the birth, and progression in small leaps and massive leaps, of the computer industry. To me, is one of the favourite things about being my age. Every time I feel old and miserable, I just think about the fact that I got to see the progression of the most important and profiteering industry in the world. It's bigger than Hollywood, isn't it, the computer industry, which is not so difficult right now because Hollywood is a woke fucking mess and everyone's on strike, and hopefully this will come, as I said last week, to a cold hard boot of Hollywood, because it's fucking needed. Because I saw the Barbie movie, I didn't pay for it, it was on my, allegedly, Amazon Fire Stick, but fuck me, that's just complete in utter man bashing all the way through. What you saw in the trailers, it's like the world's fucking greatest con job. What you saw in the trailers is certainly not what you get in the movie. So bring on the cold hard reboot of Hollywood. But that was last week's movies. That's not about it this week. But yeah, so and also we had no mobile phones. Shops were closed on Sunday. We had a house phone that was 4 digits and stuff like that. It was, like I said, you had just the right amount of stuff and you had just the right amount of not having stuff to make it absolutely fantastic. So there's no arguing that when you're a kid, one of the biggest things for you, for your independence, was when you got your bike. My first bike would have been a Rally Striker. Do you remember that? It was the little brother of the Rally Grifter and had the moulded plastic shock absorbers on the front and made that weird ticking noise when you rode it. And then obviously got a BMX when the BMX craze came along, and then at the end of the 80s and into the very early 90s, I was riding a mountain bike because that craze came along. But that had enough gears for me to do several things that we want to talk about in this video, because again, I'm pretty sure kids would not be allowed to do this, especially without mobile phones, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, it was your independence, wasn't it? It was like, providing your parents would let you, and I was very fortunate in in that manner, you could ride wherever you wanted, again within reason, and we did, and it was all over to your mate's house. It was like you no longer relied on your. I mean, where we lived was just up from the village, and when I was at primary school, the village would be everyone you went to school with. Obviously, you go to secondary school, then multiple villages go to the same school, and therefore these friends are in different pockets and further away from you, which definitely meant having a mountain bike in gears an important thing. But the point is, once you got your bike, you weren't reliant on your parents to take you to and from your friend's house. You could ride there, and you did, and you never. It was. And again, is this something that would happen now? I mean, obviously, this is a global thing. Definitely in the 80s and definitely in the 90s. Don't know about the early 2000s. Didn't live in this country. Was an adult. But and I'm really not sure now. I mean, obviously, kids have bike now, so do they? Do they have e-scooters and hoverboards? And by that, I mean those stupid things with two wheels. I don't mean literal hoverboards. I am aware that I'm wearing a Back to the Future t-shirt and a clock just ticked. But so I mean, when I was at primary school, and I think we would have just when I left primary school, it would have been 1987, which is when I would have started secondary school. I would have had my BMX, and my first experience of like a little bit of independence became a much beloved part of my childhood. Was if I wasn't working for my dad, because I worked for my dad, on Saturdays for years and years and years and years. Then I'd do it on a Sunday, but if I wasn't working with my dad on Saturday, every now and then, I would ride down through the village, the local village, because we didn't live in the village, we lived on the main road up from the village, but right down into the village and pick up the comics that my mum used to order weekly from the post office. It was like a tiny, tiny, tiny convenience store for the village, but don't think convenience store like it is now. It was like the basic essentials, some veg, some meat, ice creams, sweets, newspapers, beer, a bit of everything, but in a very cut down manner. Had a video store for a bit, and also I rented Betamax tapes from it, and also you could go in the back of the store where you rented the Betamax tapes from and the VHS tapes from, and get a quarter of bonbons and a quarter of cola cubes and cherry cubes and stuff like that. But you used to order comics from there, and I used to get the Beano, and I was really young at that point. Then I used to get Transformers UK, which I absolutely adored and loved that comic. It was absolutely fantastic. They used to print half of the US strips, and then the back would be a backup strip, and they had Rocket Raccoon, they had Hercules, they had G.I. Joe at one point, and they just, it was never completely Transformers all the way through to the end, apart from a couple of times, like when Headmasters was a backup strip and stuff like that. I am aware that I'm going all over the shop, but I love that comic. And then every now and then they'd start, Simon Furman would write and Jeff Senior would draw it, and they'd do their own UK strips. And this is not a them and us, were so much better than the US strips. Like, they're renowned for this. Ask any true Transformers fan, even in the US, they will say Transformers UK was amazing. But I adored that comic, and I look forward to it every week so much. So I would ride down there on a Saturday or early Sunday morning, if I couldn't on Saturday, and pick up mine and my brother's, and later on a copy of 2000 AD, which I absolutely loved and adored, and still the Beano, and then ride home with a rucksack. And even then I knew to put corrugated card in there to protect these, and then it was brilliant. It was so cool. It's like, I'm off to get my comics, me by myself, so I'm like 11, 12 at this point, probably more so 11, down to the village post office and back up. But it was that first big taste of, and this is the village where all my mates lived, initially. And all the ones that, because I grew up with them in my primary school, were my true friends that I hang out more with other people, from the other villages and went to my secondary school. We'll mention some of them in this. And so that was my first big taste of how cool bikes were, and I absolutely loved that. And then when we started going to secondary school, once we all started getting bikes, and it was a case of this only started happening because your parents would trust you and let you go. And obviously we didn't have mobile phones, and I guess people say, like, well, the world wasn't as dangerous then. Bollocks. The world's just as dangerous then as it is now. Just, it wasn't as prevalent during media and the way the police investigated, and I guess modern crime investigation and stuff like that. It was just as fucking dangerous. In fact, it was more so for us because we didn't have mobile phones. Even though I loved that as a kid, that wouldn't make sense until I'd been an adult with a mobile phone that I could say that statement. I am very much aware of that. But yeah, so our parents had no way to track us. We would literally go, I'm riding to the village. More often than not, we wouldn't even say whose house we were going to because we weren't going to a house. And this would be after school, and this would definitely be in the summer holidays, but it would be like, I'm going to the village. Where are you going? I'm going to Luke's house, or I'm going to Oggie's house. His name was Andrew Osborne, so obviously we're kids. We called him Oggie. But yeah, there was a playing field in my village, and it was a football pitch, but it was like that. It was 45 degrees, and there were goalposts at the top that were like literally, they weren't real goalposts. I think they were manufactured out of piping and just stuck in the ground. At the top, at the bottom, it sucked if you were at the bottom playing up, because every time someone kicked and scored a goal, you'd have to walk like 50 yards to get the ball out the hedge. And at the top, there were like big concrete pipes that you sat on or you could sit in. And it was like the hub of our village if you were kids. And the minute we started riding bikes, you would always arrange to meet there, and we'd have a game of football. And yeah, and that was it. And so I can just remember so much that you ride down it means nothing to you, into the heart of the village, up V Lane, and then the corner of the field was just open, and you go in and you could see it. These two football posts, and we played so many games of football there. And these pipes, and then you could I just remember you saw everyone's bikes all at the top, just on their side and stuff like that. And so we'd always meet there, even if we just sat on the pipes and talked about crap and talked about movies and things like that, or made plans, stuff to do. But we'd always have a game of football. We'd get a few of us, more often than not, it'd be me, my brother, Oggie, and Luke Buckland. And yeah, and I have such memories of so many, just these little, knockabouts that we would have in the village that were made possible because we could just hop on our bikes and ride to this place. And that leads me into a next memory that I loved about riding to this village. Was it would be on Sundays, and I forget when this was, but this would have been early secondary school because of the movies I watched, because we didn't get Sky until 1989, and so this was a great way. You got to watch movies there, although my parents were pretty good at this, but movies that weren't age, related to you, if that made sense. You shouldn't be watching. And we used to go over Oggie's on a Sunday morning, and I remember just watching so many movies there. And two movies that really, really stand out would be Lethal Weapon, which I just remember being amazing as a kid, and Lost Boys. Never saw Lost Boys. I don't know if my parents wouldn't rent it for me. It wouldn't have been on TV at that point. It wouldn't have been on satellite until 1989. So this would have been 1988. I would have been first, in the most, second year, because obviously you were 2 years in one school calendar year. And I just remember being absolutely blown away by Lost Boys. It instantly became one of my favourite movies. And just fucking amazing. What's Rocky 2 there? What's Rocky 4 there? Brilliant memories, absolutely brilliant memories. Just, hop on where you going? Going to Luke's, going to Oggie's, just going to the village, but that would mean the playing fields. I mean, my mum could phone these people. She could phone Andrew's mother, she could phone Luke's mother. You could phone these people in this village to work out where your friends had gone. You weren't completely off radar, although we were once. And I actually think about this. I've talked about this before many, many years ago, that this is insane that we did this. We probably never realised what possible danger we could have been in at the time, but at the same time, everyone did this. Every kid did this, and I'm sure this is, around the globe in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, so many other fond memories would be after school, or on the weekends, and obviously in the summer holiday. Once we'd had a little kick around and stuff like that, we'd go down my mate Luke Buckland's house, and I just have many, many memories of being sat in his lounge, with just me, him, sometimes my twin brother, and just again watching movies and movies and movies and movies. And it was a brilliant. The lounge setup in his house was just like, it was cinematic, big TV, curtains drawn, sofa all the way around. And I just remember, because we both got to Def Leppard at the same time, and we just rinsed and rinsed and rinsed Def Leppard live in the round, which it took live footage of them in the round, which is essentially the Hysteria videos, and edited it all together, but it wasn't actually live. But loved that video, absolutely loved that video. Looked it up on eBay, many, many times, and it goes for so much money. But these were great moments. Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, dependent upon when I was working, summer holidays, just so many memories. But again, it was right to the village. Stay there all day. His mum might make you a sandwich and stuff like that. Ride around the village, go to the local store, buy yourself, like the store I mentioned where I got my comics from, buy yourself an ice cream, buy yourself a lolly, buy yourself a chocolate bar, stuff like that. But you just hang out in the summer in the village, because obviously we didn't live in the village, so everything was going on in the village. And that's where all the people with I went to school, and obviously quite a few people in my form in secondary school. were obviously in my village, not just the people I grew up with from primary school. This is going all over the shop. But yeah, these are just moments that I look back upon and think, if kids don't do this now, if they can't just hop on their bike and ride to their mate's house, which, if a certain distance away, I fully understand not being able to, even if they got a phone, because of the dangers of the modern world, although as I've argued, it was just as fucking dangerous then I think they really are missing out on a part of their childhood. And I won't even go into the fact that people would have different computers, different consoles and different systems, because I've talked about that before, though Luke had a ZX Spectrum and Oggy had a ZX Spectrum at those points. But those memories, they were just fantastic. Like I said, just hopping on your bike, riding down the village. And then the next time we would do this was, we would start organising football games. So we're at secondary school now, so we're probably going for definitely year 2 and into year 3. Obviously we'll cover, this is probably a little bit before I had a Mega Drive, but we would organise football games with the guys in Winford, because obviously you get exposed to bigger groups of friends when you go to secondary school, and this was the village over from us, so this would probably be a round trip of maybe 2.5, 3 miles. No biggie, moderately flat ground all the way, a little bit of a hill coming back. And so a bunch of us, again, it would be like me, my brother, Luke Buckley, my mate Shane at this point. Well, we'd all ride, he'd have to ride up from Downside, which was down the road from my house, which isn't even in the village, ride up on his bike, we'd all ride down there. They had a football pitch, kind of not as much slant as the one next to, or the one in our village, because our one was nothing to do with the school, but this was next to their school. And we'd have kick-arounds, which was literally the boys from Felton against the boys from Winford, and that was cool, because then you're riding a whole village over, then you felt even more independent. But again, you were on the radar of your parents, you know, it wasn't too dodgy or shit like that. I just remember they had climbing frames there, and we just sat there one day and we were just talking, and this was a Saturday, and we had a kick around and stuff like that. It was taken quite serious, but it was all like fun as well. It wasn't like people studs up and Chopper Harris and shit like that going in, you know. But just talking about TV, and I just remember Kevin Reed, who we called Ched, and he was like, one kid was just funnier than every other kid at school, wasn't it? They were just like, I don't say class clown because that sounds stupid, but like a performer. And I don't mean cock around and being stupid like that, like just someone who was like funny and could make you laugh and without being an idiot. And that was that guy who was just talking about how much he loved Saturday Night TV. Big Break, which was a snooker show and stuff like that. I just remember Saturday, I've never forgotten this. All of us were just pissing ourselves. This doesn't sound funny, I'm aware of that, but yeah, but it was like these little meetups, and now we're meeting up with people from another village. I'd ride down my mate Shane's house, who was the guy who said he would start to ride up with us, and he'd be like down the main road, which your parents would know where you're going, and they wouldn't care about. Well, I mean, we had our cycling proficiency, but we didn't fucking do anything proper. We didn't have lights and shit like that. Ride down his house, hang out down his house all day Saturday. You know, his parents would cook me dinner and tea, stuff like that. But at this point, your parents weren't taking you anywhere. You were going there on bike, and I probably had a mountain bike at this point. Probably did for when we rode to Winford, you know, for a kick around. But it's like I said, I can understand not being granted this level of freedom anymore. But if kids don't or aren't, I mean, it probably more so is they are allowed to. By all means, let me know. I mean, if you've got kids, if you're my age, Generation X, then you've probably got, you know, getting up their kids and stuff. Do you let them? Do they even have bikes? Are they interested in bikes? You know, do they ride over their mate's house? Because honestly, and you see it in movies, and you see it in American movies, and you see it in English movies from back in the day. But this was a big deal. This was your social structure. This was your mode of transport. This was your independence, and this is what it was about, like, or what it was about being a kid. Because it was fantastic. And yeah, and so we'd start going further and farther, you know, and pushing the boundaries of where we could ride. And we'd start riding down through Winford and toward, because we rode to Winford Market once, which is outside the other side of Winford and probably a bit further on. And it's basically, I mean, it's got fish and chips and shit in it now, but it was just literally like a farmer's market and a cattle market. And they probably thought, why are these kids coming in? Didn't have lights on your on your bikes, who had fucking locks, sorry, as well as lights. And yeah, and then I remember that we organised a football game between us and the kids who lived in Stanton Drew, and it would have been, at this point, it was me, Shane, my brother Ian, I can't remember if Luke was there, I'm pretty sure he would have been, was Oggy there? See, it's ages and ages and ages ago. I also remember the fact of going there and how long it took to get there and back, and how utterly tiring it was. But what a big trip it was, and what a big deal it was. And I'm pretty sure we never told. This is what I mean about this being dangerous. We never told my parents. By the way, we're riding to Stanton Drew, because that probably would have been. Gotta think. See, I don't know, because I haven't been there now in years. It must be a round trip pushing. Gotta be at least 15 miles. Dare I say pushing 20? By all means, if anyone who knows, we don't even fucking know what Stanton Drew is, do you? To be honest. From my house to Stanton Drew, it's gotta be 10 miles. Maybe a little bit more. We rode all the way down through Winford, out the other side. Lanes, mind, country lanes, no lights, no high-vis, no helmets, no phones. Because we weren't pussies back then. All the way to Stanton Drew, their playing field, which I think was with their school, and we had a kick around primarily with the kids who were my mates in my form, which would have been Lee Helen, the kid who always bragged vicariously about his mate Matthew Watson, who was also there having an Amiga because they couldn't stand my fucking Mega Drive. We rode to their house. We rode to their playing field, their school, had a kick around of football. So we rode all this way, then played football, then rode to Lee's house and played on his Amiga in his basement. For hours and hours and hours. I'm pretty sure we even watched Nog. And that was like, see, you got hit in a lane then. You got no mobile phone. If the person didn't stop, you can't call an ambulance or anything like that. You can't call the police. See, didn't give a fuck then. You're indestructible when you're a kid. But as an adult, I do look back upon that and think, fucking hell, we were taking a risk. It got even riskier on the way back. But yeah, that was brilliant. Like, that was, you felt, we would have probably been third years. Maybe, definitely third years, maybe fourth years, but I want to say third years. So what am I in that? That's definitely 89, 1990, I would say. But yeah, we rode there. I had my mountain bike. My brother had a racer. Shane had a racer. Can't remember anyone else's bike. Stopped in on the way back when it was dark and we had no lights. This is what I mean about being proper dangerous. Didn't, you know, went into Winford Market, got like a can of fizzy drink and stuff like that. And yeah, so we did a round trip like that, riding through the lanes, no high vis, no helmet, no lights, in the dark, all the way back to my house. Shane would ride down the road to his house, Luke was able to ride to his house, and I'm pretty sure we didn't get a bollocking, even though it was dark. I'm pretty sure we didn't get a bollocking. It wasn't like, where were you? Because this was just part and parcel accepted then. Might have been, get some fucking lights, or you're not doing this again. Because I do remember I had to get lights. My parents did make me get lights for my bike, but they were shit back then. Like 2 big fucking D batteries in this unit that was like that and like that. One for the front, one for the back. Would probably add a ton of weight to your fucking bike. It didn't light up fuck all. But yeah, that was what, you know, that night I was knackered, absolutely knackered, but just felt like you really achieved something special because obviously years before you could drive. Rode all the way to Stanton Drew, had a game of football, played on a mate's computer that because my brother didn't have one at that point, we didn't have access to, even though my Mega Drive was better. What a day that was. As a kid, what a day that was. And this is, I'm probably not doing this justice unless you're from my generation, but what a big deal it was to get a bike and ride around your mate's house, you know. Rode down the road to Paul Torrens' house, that was easy. All the way down was on a hill, played his Commodore 64. Then all the way back, uphill, bit of a bastard. Obviously, I used to ride to the pub I worked at on a Friday night, all the way downhill, piece of piss, riding all the way back. That was probably, you know, a pinch over quarter of a mile, so not too far all the way back, uphill, absolute bastard. Slugged it on the way home because if I got back quickly enough, I could watch the second half of Cheers, because obviously I'd finish at 11 o'clock at night, Cheers would start at 11, Channel 4, get back at quarter past, watch the second half of Cheers. That's how I ended up falling in love with Cheers. But more so than, you know, riding to work, which is still kind of cool in itself because there's that level of independence, especially with you earning your own money. But I've talked about that in the videos I've talked about part-time jobs and shit like that. Just that sense of freedom and just going out for mates and hanging around at your mate's house all day. Your parents, obviously, they didn't know where it's Stanton Drew. They knew where we were when we were in Fulham, not so much when we were in Winford. But it was just, what I'm trying to say is, it was just a sense of freedom, not just independence, but freedom you had, you know, and like riding over mates to watch movies that you did not have, play computers that you did not have, getting, having their parents cook for you and stuff like that, because it was all one big community. That's what I liked back then. If your mates rode to your house, because obviously they rode to our house loads and loads and loads, like I said in that video about my perfect summer when I had Street Fighter 2, and obviously when I had my Mega Drive, people would come up, Street Fighter 2 on my Super Famicom, and people would come up. Your parents would provide them food. They didn't care. They didn't begrudge it. This is what it is. Your mates are coming over. You provide them with food and beverages. And it was just that kind of communal spirit. It was like an unwritten rule that if you went round someone's house, parents didn't care. I mean, is this even a thing now? And you would never announce, you never phone for permission to say that, I'm coming to your house like that. Or can I come round and see Luke today? You probably should do that. Never ever did that. You just showed up and they didn't care. Again, that was part and parcel of what I loved about jumping on your bike and riding to a mate's house. Possibly we were being a bit rude and accommodating, but still fantastic memories. And then there was when I used to ride down Carlos's house, and this would have been like 1991, 1992. So I'd been to America at this point, didn't have a driving license till the next year, so getting up there at this point. But used to ride to his house every night after school, and every night in the summer holidays, hang out, play games and stuff like that. But the highlight for me, and I've mentioned this, and it carried on when I got a car, it was just easier then, we could argue a bit of the charm we'd gone, was we watched The Late Show with David Letterman. He introduced me to it. We had Sky, he had Sky. I never watched The Late Show. He was like, literally, I found this thing, it's called The Late Show with David Letterman, and it was one day behind North America. And that was a brilliant one. Used to ride, again, didn't have fucking lights, but it was just through the village, easy down Curls Lane, means nothing to it, it's a hill, a little bit of a hill on the way back. But yeah, I rode there, and then obviously that all ended when I passed my driving test in 1993, which was awesome for me. I could drive into Bristol and shit like that. Whole new level of independence. But the nostalgia I have for that little bit, your first taste of freedom and going to visit your mates, going around the houses and stuff like that, absolutely amazing. I look back upon that with such genuine, fond, nostalgic memories. Not fucking member goggles and shit like that, just truly warm memories. It was brilliant. My childhood was fantastic, and that was such a big part of my childhood. And I hope to God that kids still do this now, even if the world is a more fucked up place, which I disagree with. You got phones again, did you be tracked? If this isn't a thing anymore, then there's generations and generations of kids that are truly, truly missing out. Anyway, this kind of got away from me. As always, I'd love to know what you think, especially if you are of my generation or a couple generations, beneath me, where bikes were still a thing. And did you do similar things? Do you have such fond memories, watching videos, watching movies, hanging out all day in the summer holidays, all day? I mean, imagine how accommodating that is for the other people's parents then, all day. I'd love to know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.